Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really cool idea from an 11th century Persian philosopher. And it's an idea that completely challenges how we think about reality. Basically, he argued that what you see with your eyes, yeah, that's only half the story. There's this whole other, deeper reality that you can only tap into with what he called the inner eye of the soul. So let's kick things off with a question that sounds super simple, but really isn't. When you see something, are you just using your eyes? I mean, is the physical world all there is, or is there maybe something more going on with perception itself? Well, for the philosopher Nasir Khosrow, the answer to that is a hard no. He came up with this idea of a dual reality. He argued that we don't just have one set of senses, we actually have two. One set is for our physical body, the usual suspects. But the other, and this is the important part, is a far more powerful set of senses that belong to the soul. And this lays out his big idea perfectly. On the one hand, you've got your external senses: sight, sound, touch, the stuff we use to get around in the physical world. Pretty straightforward. But on the other hand, and this is where it gets really mind-bending, is Khosrow's idea of intrinsic senses. These belong to the soul itself, and they're not for seeing stuff. They're for perceiving pure ideas, abstract truths, a whole other non-physical reality. He actually argues that what the soul does is way more profound than anything the body can do. I mean, think about it for a second. When you form a belief, he calls that grasping. Or when you finally understand a complex idea, which he calls seeing, those are actions the soul is doing all on its own, completely independent of the body. He's saying these are the actions that really define who we are, and they happen in a place that's totally beyond physical sensation. Okay, but how do you prove something like that, right? How do you know this inner vision is a real thing and not just, a nice metaphor? Well, this is where his argument gets really, really clever. He gives us a thought experiment, the argument of the blind scholar. Just take a second to let this quote really hit you. He's pointing out that someone can be born blind, completely without physical sight, and yet they can master things like arithmetic, geometry, and logic. They can see the beauty in a mathematical proof. And here's the kicker. Khosrow flips it on its head and says, in that world of pure ideas, it's the people with physical sight who might actually be the ones who are blind. The logic here is just, wow, it's pretty solid, isn't it? If someone can't see the physical world at all, but they can clearly see and understand abstract truths, then they have to be using some other kind of vision, a non-physical vision, an inner eye. So for Khosrow, the blind scholar isn't just some hypothetical case, it's definitive proof that this other reality, the soul's reality, actually exists. Okay, so this obviously brings up the next big question. Our physical eyes need light, right? They need the sun to see anything. So if the soul has an eye, what's its source of light? What's the sun that lights up this world of ideas and truth? And Khosrow just keeps this brilliant metaphor going. He says, look, just like our physical world would be completely dark without the sun, the world of ideas, what he calls the intelligible world, is also just a dark, confusing place without its own spiritual sun. So what is this sun of the soul? For him, it's the light of divine guidance, which illuminates truths that our own reason could never figure out on its own. And he doesn't just pull this out of thin air. He grounds this idea directly in Scripture. He points to this really powerful verse from the Quran that describes the prophet not just as a messenger, but as a luminous lamp. And for Khosrow, this isn't just some poetic language. Nope, he takes it literally. The prophet's whole function is to be that source of light, the lamp that allows our soul's eye to finally see clearly. Now, this brings us to a really crucial point. For Khosrow, this kind of ultimate spiritual vision, well, it's not something you can just get by trying really hard. This leads him right into a massive high-stakes debate about where real truth and enlightenment actually come from. See, back then, there was this pretty popular idea that basically anyone, if they just meditated enough or purified themselves enough, could achieve the highest level of spiritual insight. We're talking a prophetic vision here. But Khosrow, he calls that out directly. He argues there's a huge difference between, strengthening your own inner sight and receiving actual prophecy, which he says is a direct gift from God. And his reasoning for this is seriously uncompromising. He's basically saying, if a human being could, just through their own effort, make a divine revelation happen, well, they'd be putting their own will on the same level as God's will. And for him, that is the biggest no-no, the ultimate act of arrogance. He calls it taking a partner with God, which is seen as an unforgivable sin. The takeaway is clear. Prophecy isn't earned, it's a gift. But wait, this doesn't mean we're just helpless. Even though Khosrow says we can't just force prophecy to happen, he does give us a path to make our own inner vision a lot clearer. The key, he says, is to quiet down what he calls the appetitive soul. That's basically the part of us that's all about worldly desires, distractions, and sensory pleasures. If you can turn down the volume on that noise, you strengthen the rational soul, your capacity for deep thinking and spiritual understanding. It's kind of like cleaning a smudge off your glasses. Once the distraction is gone, you can see everything so much more clearly. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. Your support really means a lot and helps me keep creating content for you all. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, so what's really fascinating here is how Khosrow's philosophy, coming out of 11th century Persia, builds this incredible bridge to some of the biggest ideas in Western philosophy. I mean, his concepts resonate with debates that have been going on for thousands of years across entire continents. Okay, so the most obvious connection you can make is with the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. You have Khosrow's two worlds, the sensible world that we touch and see, and the intelligible world of ideas. This is so incredibly similar to Plato's famous allegory of the cave, right? With its world of shadows on the wall versus the true reality of the world of forms outside the cave. But this also highlights the one massive difference between them. Both of them totally agree there's a higher reality we should be trying to see. The big question is, how? For Plato, the sun that lights up the true world is what he calls the form of the good, and you get there through pure, hardcore philosophical reason. For Khosrow, though, the sun is that luminous lamp of divine revelation, and that's not something you reason your way to, it's a gift of grace. Now, let's fast forward about 600 years to the 17th century and talk about René Descartes. Khosrow's super sharp split between the soul and the body is like a preview of Descartes' famous mind-body dualism. Both of them saw the thinking, non-physical us as totally separate from the physical stuff of our bodies. And get this, even their methods are kind of similar. Khosrow says to quiet the body's senses to let the soul see. Descartes? He decided to doubt all of his senses to find one thing he could be certain of, his own mind. So all of this leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. Nasir Khosrow's philosophy, it's not just some dusty, old intellectual exercise. It's a direct challenge to every single one of us. It's asking us to really consider the possibility that by focusing only on what our 5 physical senses are screaming at us all day, we might be completely ignoring a much bigger, more meaningful reality. It really makes you wonder, right? If our soul has its own way of seeing, what are we leaving unseen?